Okay, hi there. Um, so why don't we go to slide 2, Deb? And just a quick, I'm going to do a quick review of where we've been. So last week, for those of you who were there, we were talking about we did an introduction to credit cards. And so what,
Which slide do you want to be on?
why don't we just go to slide 3? That's fine. And if you remember from last week, we talked about what a credit card is. It's an electronic payment where you buy now, pay later. It's a short-term loan. And it's not connected to your bank account. You can get a credit card. It's not always easy, but you can get them from banks, from credit card companies, and from some department stores. And usually the people who have the best luck getting a credit card are those who have good credit, and we'll get into how do you know about that in a little bit, and have a regular income. That's what your credit card company is looking for, is that kind of information. Now, we also talked about why you might want one. Well, I'm sure that many people have told you that it's a good idea to have one. They're very convenient. They're great for emergency use if something comes up. It's a way to track expenses, and because you get all of your expenses laid out once a month in that statement. And you get rewards sometimes. It depends on your credit company, but sometimes you get rewards and they can be very helpful and handy to have. If we go to the next slide, a little bit more on what we talked about last week. And we talked about the advantages and the disadvantages. I think everybody is well aware of the disadvantages. It's so easy to overspend. And if you do, and you can't pay that bill at the end of the month, pay it all anyway, you will pay interest. If you pay late, you pay fees. And then this does not help your credit history. Of course, on the positive side, a credit card does give you a little extra time to pay because you only get billed once a month. It does boost your credit history if you manage it well. And it's reasonable protection against fraud or loss, because unlike a debit card, which is a direct link to your bank, a credit card is a direct link to the credit card company. So you are not stuck with the problem the credit card company is, as long as you take appropriate, fair, normal precautions about taking care of your credit card. We talked a little bit last week about the types of fees. There might be an annual fee. There might be a late fee if you don't pay on time. There might be a penalty if you don't pay on time. And of course, there is interest charges, because basically when you use your credit card, you are getting a loan from the credit card company. That first month, they don't charge you, but if you do not pay the balance, that's when the interest rate starts. And there are a couple of different types of interest rates, as we mentioned. There's the normal APR, annual percentage rate, but there's also a penalty rate if you don't pay the amount that you need to. The introductory rate is and this is one of the things we warned you about, is just know, is this an introductory rate, and is it going to go up, or is this the rate that you are going to be charged every month? And finally, as we mentioned, we talked about rewards programs, whether they're cash or miles or merchandise, things to buy, and any other kinds of offers that the credit card company might offer you so that you'll want that card. Now, let's take a look at what we're going to be doing in Chapter 2. We're going to be looking much more closely at credit card statements, how to manage that credit card of yours. We'll get into credit scores and credit reports, so you understand what we've been talking about every time we talk about your credit score. How to avoid fees and interest, and we've already talked about that a little bit. We'll try to get into a little bit more detail. And what to do about a large credit card balance if you end up with one. There are some things that you can do to make the situation better. So what you're looking at now, don't be afraid. What we decided to do, because credit cards and credit card statements have a lot of vocabulary, a lot of words. Some of them are complicated. And what we decided to do was we're going to write down every single word or term that we think is kind of complicated, kind of difficult, and then you don't have to. So the good news is we've got it all written down for you, so you don't need to take notes. And the better news for you is all of this information you will be able to show you when we start looking at an example of a credit card statement. So for example, if you look at the top of this slide, you see that blue dot, that blue bullet, and it says account summary. Account summary is one of the very, very common terms that you see in credit card statements. And you will see this in an example that we're going to show you. And then you've got those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 orange dots or bullets underneath that all just explain everything that would be helpful to know about what an account summary is, and so forth. And we've got, guess what? 2 pages of vocabulary for you that will help you to be able to read your credit card statement when you take a look at it later. So we don't need to go through that right now. We just want you to know that it's there for you when you get this PowerPoint presentation. So with that, let's go on to page 8, where we're going to take our first look at an actual credit card statement. Now, this one doesn't have any numbers in it. This is just showing you the different pieces of a credit card statement. And basically, most credit card companies are going to take these pieces of a credit card statement and probably they'll put them on 2 or maybe even 3 pieces of paper. So we've put it all together for you right now so that I can just point out a couple of quick things. And then Anne is going to walk you more slowly through the details of each one of these items. But if you look up to the left-hand upper corner, you can see a 1 with a circle around it. And right next to that 1 with the circle around it, you can see the word account summary. That's the same, those are the same words as were listed 2 pages ago in this that I was showing you. So that's how you'll be able to look up all of these words if you want to later, is each one of them, whether it's 1 or 2 or 5, are all listed in that vocabulary that we gave you. And right now, we'll turn it over to Anne, who's going to start you with the details of an account summary. Anne?
All right, thank you, Bob. So indeed, as Bob said, we have taken a typical kind of credit card statement, and there are no figures or numbers in here, no names. It's just, it shows typically how your statement will come to you. And usually all these pieces will be there, maybe not in this order, but I'm just going to go through, we have now, so the previous slide showed the whole statement. the next several slides will show you those pieces. So this has the first few pieces from that statement. So as Bob said, there are here some numbers that are in little circles, and these do refer back to the two previous slides, numbers 6 and 7. And I'm going to tell you some of what is on those slides. So you do not need to make notes. You will get the information when you get the PowerPoint. So first of all, very, very important section, you'll see number 1 is account summary, as Bob referred you to. This has some very important information, and it has some general information. So a summary means like, you know, the basics. So this will give you things like your account number. And if you look down all the words under the heading account summary, you'll see some of what I'm talking about. So the very first line says account number. I'm not going to go through every single piece of it, but I'm just going to alert you in each section to some of the most important things. So then there'll be a list of your activity, things like the payment that you made, the purchases that you made during the month, things like balances brought forward. So that's very important to see. The position that you have on your credit line. That means how much the credit card company will ever allow you as a maximum amount to spend, and then how much of that you have spent and how much of that is still available for you to spend in the next month. And it will also give you things like your opening and closing dates of the statement. Okay, so that has a lot of kind of general information. And some of that information is repeated elsewhere on the statement, as we'll see. So now if you go to where it says number 2 in the circle, and this is your payment information. So this is very important because this essentially tells you the key things that you need to know in order to pay the bill. So usually it will tell you what your new balance is, what is the minimum payment due? And remember, this is really important. Do not ever pay less than the minimum payment due, or you will start getting yourself in trouble. Okay, so the minimum payment due is very important. Always, always pay at least that and as much of what says new balance as is possible. Preferably pay all of it. And then it will tell you the payment due date. Do bear in mind that it's not the date that your check is postmarked. It's usually the date that they actually receive it. So if you're mailing off your check, allow time for it to get there. Okay, so you want to pay at least about a week ahead of the due date in order for it to be on time. Okay, number 3 in the circle there, this is your late payment warning. And that just tells you how much it's going to cost you if your payment is late. Okay, very occasionally, credit card companies may let you off that payment the first time. They may not charge it if you just do it once. But in general, they will charge you, and it's going to be a lot of money. All right, number 4, this is the minimum payment warning. So this is very helpful because it does give you in that little box there a bunch of numbers, and it will tell you if you only make the minimum payment, this is how long it's going to take you to pay off your balance, because the balance will go up every month if you only make the minimum payment and don't even buy anything else, because there will be fees and interest charges added. Sometimes not fees, but certainly interest charges. Okay, so it can take quite a long time if you only make the minimum payment to actually pay off the whole balance, even if you don't buy anything else. All right, so be very careful of that. Box number 5, number 6. Sorry, number 5 is your reward summary. So this is the good news. This is the piece you like to look at because it tells you all about your rewards. So it'll tell you what the balance brought forward is. So that's the rewards you haven't earned, you haven't spent yet or claimed. It'll tell you the rewards that you have for the month. Sometimes there'll be bonus rewards. So with one of my credit cards, every 3 months they say, ooh, you get extra rewards if you say buy gas in the next 3 months using this credit card. So sometimes there'll be little extra bonus rewards there, and then your total rewards available. And then with the total rewards available, you can either spend them or cash them in or get the merchandise gift certificate straight away, or you can let it build up, as I do, for 6 months to a year, and then sometimes there'll be a nice little amount of money there that then I get in one go. But you can do whatever you want with the rewards. This just is the piece that tells you how many you have at the moment. Section 6, not quite so important. This will just tell you if there are any important changes to your account. So just look at that. But in general, there probably won't be anything much in the way of changes. But there might be. If, say, your introductory offer ended, that would be where they would tell you. If they changed the interest rate, that would be where they would tell you. So on the next slide, this is really important. This is actually your payment coupon, or the piece that you send in with your payment if you pay by check. Now, if you pay online, you will not be using this piece. But if you are paying by check, you will take this, you will put it in the envelope that they provide, and you will put your check in with it. So again, this is a repetition of some of the previous information. It will tell you what the due date is, what you owe, what the minimum payment is, and you simply fill in where there's a line with a dollar sign. You'll fill in there the amount you're paying, and you'll just send it off again, please, in really good time for it to get there and not be late. All right, on the next slide, now we come to piece number 8. This again is your account activity, which is a little bit like number 1, your account summary, but this shows the activity or transactions for the month in a lot of detail. This is really important. This is the piece that you are all going to check against those receipts or other pieces of documentation or paperwork that you have kept throughout the months. So for instance, it will tell you there's some dates, the posting date and the transaction date. So those are just, more or less the date that you made the purchase. Then it will tell you usually who you purchased it from. So it might say Giant Supermarket, or it might say Amazon, or it might say Macy's, but it will give you the date and some of the name and some of the details, so that you can reference what exactly it was that you bought, where you bought it, when you bought it, or if it's a refund, what you returned, when you returned it, and how much that was. Okay, so that's essentially, that will be where it says merchant name. That means the name of the person that you, or company that you bought something from, and then it will give you the amount. So you are going to check your receipts against all these pieces and make sure they're correct. If they do not agree, if the amount is different, then, or something is missing that you think should be there, then you're going to call the credit company and explain to them and ask why there's a difference. Also here, you will get anything else that is your activity for the month. So that will include fees and interest charged. So you're going to look at those. If you think they're correct, you'll just have to pay them. If you think there's been an error, again, call your credit card company. Okay, so that's a really important piece for you to look at. And what I do is at the end of the month, when I've looked at my credit card statement and compared all my receipts, I simply staple all the receipts to my statement so that then I can easily find them again. Okay, easier than just putting them all in a big box where they're in a big jumble, but here I'm actually attaching them to my statement and then I file it away. So box number 9, this again just shows you fees and interest, but slightly differently in that this shows you the fees and interest charged for the year. So sometimes you can be charged fees and interest and it doesn't seem like very much, oh, okay, it's costing me like, $10 this month. Oh dear, I'll do better. But if you look at this box, once it starts adding up as the months go by, you know, you can be 6 months into the year and that can say $70, which might have only been about $11 a month. But, you know, this will be a wake up call to you that, you know, this is not good, that it's adding up. So honestly, if you have anything in those boxes, you need to make sure that you try and manage your credit card better, because ideally you want nothing at all in those boxes. Okay. So the next piece, this is the last slide that we are looking at that shows about our credit card statement. And this is really, again, just a little bit of extra information about things like your interest charges. So it shows you the interest charges, and realize, since this has a whole section, this is because oftentimes people's credit cards have a lot of figures on this section, which is not good. So again, really look at this, and if there's a lot of money on here, then you need to learn to manage your credit card better. So it will show you interest on all the different things that have happened over the month, interest on purchases, interest on balance transfers. We did talk a bit about this last week. This is if you, for some reason, would be closing out a credit card and transferring some balance to this newer credit card. That is really expensive. They always charge you fees as well. It's usually something like 4% that they charge you straight away just for transferring the balance. So please try not to do that. Same with cash advances. This is a way of you can actually borrow money, actual cash, against your credit card, and it will be treated like a purchase. But again, there is usually a big fee to do that. It's about 4% plus interest. So again, you really don't want to be doing that. It's available to you on most credit cards, but it's not a good idea. Okay, so
Anne, why don't you just stop for a minute and see if anybody has questions?
Yeah, that's exactly. So does anyone have any questions on any of those pieces? Again, the details of it will be sent to you in the PowerPoint slides, but does everybody broadly understand sort of what goes on the credit card statement, where you find that information, what it means, what are the important things for you to look at? I know it was a lot, and some of you I know already have credit cards, so you've already seen statements. So is there anything that anybody has trouble with reading, or anything that wasn't on here that you would like explained, or anything I said that you didn't understand? Or are you all good to go? Okay, so if I cancel the Macy's credit card.
We have a question in the chat box.
Yeah.
It says, if I cancel the Macy's credit card, will it affect my credit score?
Oh, that is an excellent question. So we are actually going to be talking about that in a little minute. In general, I'm going to say anything that you do may affect your credit score. It may not affect it very much. So Bob will be talking a little bit more about that in a minute, but so the answer is yes, but the answer also is it may not affect it very much. If you only have one credit card and you replace it with another credit card, it's not likely to affect it an awful lot. If you have, say, 4 credit cards and you close them all, then it will affect it a lot. Okay, so the effect will be kind of small usually, and over time, not really. So the other thing is sometimes it's good to keep credit cards open and just spend a little tiny bit on them if you've had that credit card for a long time, because one of the things important in your credit history is how long you've had an account open. And if it's been open a while, that's better than one that you haven't had open for very long. Okay, so, but we will be talking a little bit more about that. So I also see another question. What is a promotional APR? So a promotional APR, the APR is the annual percentage rate. Again, that's how much interest is over a year. Typically, a credit card these days, as Bob said last week, the interest rate can be anything from 5% per year upwards. I looked at my credit card statement this morning. Mine is 15%. Okay, so I think at the moment, round about 11 to 15% is normal, and that's the annual, so it's per year. So if it's 12% a year, it will actually be 1% per month. Okay, so promotional means that that's a special offer that they're giving you. Usually when you first open the credit card, it will be called a promotional APR, and that means it will be a very low annual interest rate, usually to encourage you to do a lot of spending. Because if you start off by doing a lot of spending, then you're likely to keep up doing a lot of spending, and the credit card company is very happy about you owing them money and spending money on your account. So promotional means really temporary or for a short time, for a particular reason, like it is an introductory offer. Okay, so most people, other than when they first have a credit card, will not have something called promotional APR. It'll just be the regular APR. Did that answer your question? Okay. Are there any more questions? I know I did go through quite a lot quite quickly. No more questions? And you can, oh. So Elizabeth has a question.
Yes, she says, what if you have the credit card and you use it for some times, but then pay it off? Then you decide not to use or close it. Will that also affect your score?
So again, everything you do affects your score, but oftentimes things you do don't affect it very much. So closing a credit card certainly does affect it, but if you replace it with another one, it will not affect it very much. So you have to decide. Sometimes it's good, honestly, just to keep it open if you've had it a long time, and just very occasionally, you know, maybe 2 or 3 times a year, just make a small purchase and pay it off straight away. That does help to strengthen your credit score. But again, Bob is going to talk about that. So why don't we move ahead now and let her talk to you more about your credit scores and credit history, and then you can certainly ask her some more questions too. Okay, Bob?
Sounds good. Okay, great lead into credit scores and credit reports. So what is a credit score? It is a number, and it's reflecting how well you manage to pay back loans. So I think when you're thinking about what should I do or not do, think about it with this context, this way of thinking in mind is, how does this show that I'm good at paying back the loans that I have, whether you're talking about credit cards or any other kind of loan. Normally, the credit score is what is called a FICO score. There are several different scoring systems, but this is the most popular, the most well-known, most used. So when people talk about credit scores, usually they're talking about a FICO score. The range of the score is between 300 and 850. And as we've talked about, I believe already, a good credit score makes it easier for you to get a loan. And a good credit score means it's likely you're going to get a better interest rate as well. Now, so what is a good credit score? Above 670 is a good rating. Below 580 is a poor rating. So you can keep those numbers in mind. The little picture helps you as well. If we can go on to the next slide. So what's a credit report? So the score is actually a number. The credit report is a summary of your borrowing and payment history. It shows your current credit situation. In other words, how many loans you have, how many credit cards you have, what's the balance on those credit cards, have you paid off the balances when they were due, were there any late payments, and so forth, whether you're talking credit cards, auto loans, everything. But the focus is on what the company is trying to figure out is how well do you pay back the loans that you have on time, full amounts, and so forth. So how do you get your credit report and score? There are basically three companies who are well known for providing this information. And their names, as you can see on the slide, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. And you can go to the websites of these companies and just ask. And you get a chance to ask once a year to each one of these companies. So if you really, really, really want to know what your credit score is more than once a year, you go to one company one time of the year, and you go to a different company another time of the year. And apparently there are some people who like to just do, keep going each year, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. And then the next year, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. And that's the way they keep track. My recommendation is just pay off your loans as they come due, and you probably have a once you get a sense of that pattern, you won't need to be looking for your credit reports regularly. You can also go to annualcreditreport.com, and they will give you a credit report as well. It's a company that offers this information as well. And you can ask your credit card company to get a report from them. It's not quite the same. This is a credit card company. It's not one of the big three that do these credit reports, but they'll give you an idea of your credit history and your credit report. Okay, if we go on to the next slide. So I think this kind of gets at some of the questions that Anne was asking. And so how do I get a good credit score? Probably the most important piece of information to keep in mind is always pay all of your bills on time. That's probably the biggest factor. So focus on that, and then you don't have to worry quite so much, to Anne's point about whether you have one credit card or two credit cards. If you want to get rid of one, can you do it? Certainly, if you are focusing on how well you manage your debt, and if you pay all your bills on time, you won't have to worry about if you want to get rid of a credit card. You could just get rid of it if you don't need it anymore, because that's not going to make a big difference, to Anne's point. Don't spend more than 30% of your credit line. What the credit line is, excuse me. So the available credit line is what the total amount that you can borrow, what the company that's assessing your credit and your credit management, if you can keep your borrowing under 30%, clearly you are managing this credit line very, very conservatively. So that is also a very good factor in your favor as far as getting a good credit score. You don't need a lot of debt, and you keep it down at a lower level. That's a good sign from a credit card assessment perspective or a credit assessment perspective. Manage the loans that you have well, whether it's a credit card or a car loan or a student loan or a mortgage payment. The same principles apply. pay them on time, manage the debt down, always be on top of the payments rather than trying to catch up. To the point about credit cards and how many should I have, or moving from one card to another, in general, it's better to stick with the card you have. If you need to, stick with the two. If you move from credit card to credit card, that is of concern to when these companies are reviewing your credit history, because they're going to start wondering, why are you moving from one credit card to another? What's going on? Are you trying to shift balances because you're having trouble managing your debt? So a simple practice is figure out what you need and stick with it. And yes, there are some times when you just don't need a credit card anymore. And I have done that. I've said, this is silly. I don't need this card. I'm closing the account. But it doesn't make a big difference if you've got a pattern over time of taking care of all of the more important pieces that we've already talked about managing your debt. And then, of course, don't get a lot of new accounts. The more different types of debt you have, the more that's going to be of concern, because at some point, even if your credit card is only at 30%, but you have a car loan and you have a mortgage and and you have a student loan, that's a lot of debt. And these companies are not interested in how much money you make. They are only interested in how much debt you have and how good you are at paying it off on time. So that's the focus that you should bring to thinking about having a good credit score.
Barb, you have a question in the chat box.
Could you read it, please?
Yes, sometimes stores give an incentive discount if you open a new card on that day. They even tell us that we can apply and get approval right away, make purchases with the new credit card, and pay it off right on that day.
Yeah.
I've done it a couple of times for big item purchases. Does this affect my credit rating? I use a certain credit card all the time, which I pay off every month. So I have a good credit history, but can getting a new credit card just to use the discount for a day affect my credit rating?
Well, that's a good question. And it depends on how much weight the organization is going to give to that one decision. And if you look at the always pay your bills on time, don't spend more than 30%, manage your loans, all of those are more important factors, to Anne's point, than having another credit card or switching cards. They have percentages that they assign to each one of these factors. So it's probably not going to make much difference. You can always check. You can always go out online and ask for your credit report and see if it changed, but I'm going to guess probably not, unless you do this a lot. And then these companies may begin to wonder what are you doing? But I suspect if everything else is well managed, that it's not going to make much difference. A few points one way or another is not really of concern. It's when you're going from 750 down to 590. That's what you've got to be worried about. Okay, shall we go on?
You have another in the chat box from Babak. I spent more than 30%, but I gave back on time, but my credit score, I don't understand exactly my credit score numbers.
When
I think what he's saying is he went down.
Yeah,
it went down 11 numbers.
11, but 11 is not a large number when you think about relative to if If it's 750, it goes down 11 points. That's not a big drop. It's telling you that the companies that assess your credit are paying attention. It's saying, it's acknowledging something, but it's not a big drop if everything else stays the way you've been managing it. And especially if you don't keep doing it, your credit score is going to go back up. So that's a little bit, as you are making decisions about how to manage your purchasing, manage your debt, and so forth, you may see a little up and down. But that would not be a big drop. That would not be a big problem. Anything else? Okay. Now let's just take a closer look at managing a credit card. Probably also true of just about any other kind of debt, but we're focusing back on credit cards here. Always pay those bills on time. I think we've probably said that to you now. I'm not sure how many times, right, Anne? Work hard to avoid those fees and interest. So that means pay your balance in full each month. Pay on time. One thing you can consider is using automatic payments. This would be direct payment from your bank account, for example. That's a simple thing to do, except you've got to remember to keep track of your bank account. What you want to make sure is that you have the money in your bank account, so that these automatic payments will actually go through. It doesn't help if you're not paying attention to the balance in your bank account. As we've said several times, pay that minimum balance for sure. Always, always. More if you can, and avoid the big balance. It's just like when you think about using that debit card, is buy the things you have money to pay for. Buy the things you need, as we talked about when we talked about budgeting. And again, just like other opportunities for credit, don't spend over that 30% credit line. And if you do, know that it would be much better to pay that back down to, make sure that you're getting back down under 30. If you wanted a very large purchase and you saved up the money, your balance may go over that 30%, but then pay it off and it's underneath the 30 again. You're not going to have a problem. Keep in mind that opportunity for good rewards, such as cash back, but my suggestion is don't what I would call chase offers. Sometimes the promotion sounds wonderful, but then when they get to, okay, it's no longer so wonderful, that cash back is not worth the cost of the credit card if there's an annual fee, for example, or you never use the miles. So what good is this? So you don't need to fuss too much about the rewards, especially if you're not sure you're going to use them. And to that point, be careful of those introductory offers. Finally, okay, what do I do? What do I do if I get in trouble? My balance is too high. I can't afford to pay it. What am I going to do? Okay. Well, I think you probably all would guess this first point is pay off as much as you can as soon as you can. So the answer is always do something. And then here are some other possibilities. One possibility is to consider credit counseling. Now be careful, be careful. You want a nonprofit organization that is going to help you, not an organization that is going to charge you a lot of money to help you. So before you call up any kind of counseling, consider, do I have a budget? Have I planned to manage, how would I manage my credit down if it were all up to me? So don't be afraid to start doing this work yourself. And finally, you can call up the credit card company and explain you've got an awful large balance right now and see if they can help you with some kind of repayment program. Because they really don't want you to be in an enormous amount of debt. They would like to get their fees, they would like to get their interest, but they would also like to keep you as a customer. In the meantime, don't spend any more money on your card. You do not need a larger balance. So stop using the card. And do not get another card. The idea of trying to transfer a balance to reduce the balance on one card and put it on another, that's expensive, and you still have the same amount of debt. So it really doesn't help. And again, back to that whole basic idea about budgeting is focus on what you need when you spend money and not what you want, because that credit card is an awful easy way to spend money on what you want. So you have to get back to that whole idea of what do you need and how do you pay for it, whether you're using a credit card or any other form of payment. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Anne, and she'll take you home.
So I think we do have another couple. I'll just summarize this. Then we'll go back to the chats. So again, broadly today, we looked at credit card statements and how you can manage your credit card. We talked quite a bit about credit scores and credit reports, and we'll come to those more questions in a minute. And we talked about how to avoid fees and interest and what to do if your credit card balance starts building up or even gets completely out of hand. So we do have another couple of questions. Let me maybe address those before I go on to our little case study. So I think somebody asked if someone already has a bad score, how to turn it into a good number, which I think Bob covered. Is opening another and new credit card useful for building credit history or increasing your credit number? These are difficult questions to answer. I think what I would say in summary is that everything you do, opening up cards, closing cards, spending more, spending less, paying off balance quickly, paying it off slowly, all of these things do affect your credit score. But as Barbara said, the main thing to remember is that your credit score is out of, more than 800 points. So my score typically drops 10 points and then goes up 10 points again. Maybe I spent a little bit more 1 month. I still pay it off straight away every month, but it does slightly change the kind of percentages that the company is looking at. So my score goes up and down 10 points now and again, even if I don't change my habits very much. So I do want everybody to realize that and not panic. Okay, if it goes up and down a bit, that's to be expected. It's not often that it stays exactly the same for, say, a period of a year. It will go up and down a bit. Mostly you don't want to do drastic things. So you don't want to be, I've had a new credit card for 2 months. Now I want to open another one. And then 2 months later, I want to open another one. Okay, that's the kind of thing that people are going to look at what you're doing and say, whoa, what is the problem? If you have had a credit card for a while and you've managed it well and you want to get another credit card, and you think you can manage it equally well, then that is not a bad thing. One of the things you have to be careful of is that you don't have available credit, which is the amount that all the credit card companies in total will allow you to spend or borrow. You don't want to have that figure be enormous. So even if people will lend you a lot of money, that's not going to be good for your credit history, even to have that much available. So if you open credit cards, you have to be careful that they're not giving you an enormous line of credit, and that it's something that you can actually use and that you will be able to manage well. So from that point of view, the main piece of advice I think I would give is just do things that seem sensible. Okay, if it seems sensible to you, like you've had one credit card for a while, you know, you've really never used it, it's maybe your Macy's card, maybe you actually want a Visa card, that would be much better for you. So yes, you could close the Macy's card and get the Visa card. It will affect your score a little bit, but again, as time goes by and you manage it well, it's not going to affect it much. Do not open credit cards just because. Okay, you should only open credit cards really if you actually need them and if you have proved to yourself that you can do this well. Okay, so it's very difficult because the formula that the credit card companies use for figuring out your credit score is very complicated. Okay, so for instance, if you have a credit card and you never use it, that's actually going to be bad on your credit score. Okay, but if you use it a little bit wisely and you pay off the balance, that's going to be just as good as if you spend a lot of money on it and you still pay off the balance. Okay, I think we have another question.
Could I just jump in for one quick minute? I see that there's somebody was asking if someone already has a bad score, how do you turn it into a good number? Well, the answer is it depends on so many questions about how the score was determined. But keep in mind, here's just a piece of information that late and missing payments will stay on your credit report for up to 7 years. So to the point about how do you, if you already have a bad score, then presumably there have been late payments, missing payments, not strong management of debt. And that information may be on your credit history, your credit report, and therefore influencing your score for 7 years. So that's why we keep emphasizing pay the bills on time, full amount, over and over and over, because over the years, that starts to show a history that is, you know, the longer you go without late payments, without missing payments, then that may be an important factor, but it has to be demonstrated over time because that negative information does stay on the report for about 7 years. So you need to know that it could take a while to change that number.
So also we do seem to have some more questions. So the last question, the answer is no, it does not affect anything if you have a normal transaction, whether it's buying something or whether it's returning something. Returning it in particular does not affect your credit score at all. There was a very interesting question about what happens if you don't use your credit card, you just save it for emergencies. And I'm going to say on balance, it's better if you have a credit card to use it occasionally. It doesn't matter if you only buy something worth $5, but it's not a good idea just to have one that you never use. So at least maybe every 3 months, just try and put something on it that's very small, even $5 or $10, and just pay it off straight away. Okay, because that has the same effect almost as you putting large purchases on it, because it shows that you get yourself some debt and you pay off the debt straight away. Okay, so
Anne, there's one more thing on that, is that if you don't use it for a long time, they will probably cancel that card. They will make a decision that you're not using it, and they will just send you a note that says, we're stopping that card, you can't have it anymore.
Right. There's another question about, that's interesting, about the difference between a Visa card and a MasterCard. They are just both different networks. So they are somewhat different, but they do the same thing. And most places that actually accept Visa do also accept MasterCard. So if you have one or the other, usually it is not necessary to go ahead and get a different one. If you're not going to get yourself a card that it's accepted at more places. It's just going to be a different credit card. So if you already have Visa or MasterCard, it's just a different network, and you do not need to go ahead and have the other one, for any reason other than you would like to have a second credit card. But essentially they're the same thing. They just have different names, and the company is different, but they do the same thing. And I think there's another question. Wow, you are great with the questions today. Oh, this is really good. Can one spouse's credit rate affect the other? Can one spouse's credit rate affect the other's credit rate? Bob, do you even know the answer to that? Unless if things are joint, then yes. If things are not joint, then potentially no. But that's a complicated question. Certainly if you have a bunch of things that are joint, like your bank account and your credit cards, then it will affect it. If you keep things totally separate, then it probably won't affect it.
Well,
go ahead.
There's some complications to that too. So even if you keep separate credit histories, but then you want to go do something like buy a house, then both of those credit histories will be considered. And so then it does start to affect it.
Yes. All right, so let's just go ahead and do our little case study on the next slide. And then we will be done for the day. So here, this is a little story about Laila. So Laila is a very hard worker. She's had her credit card for 2 years, and she's actually afraid to use it very much. She's very nervous about putting purchases on it in case she can't pay it. So she only really uses it if she wants to buy she needs to buy some new clothes for work. And of course, she uses it for things like birthday present for her mother, probably the most important spending every year, right? Present for her mother or her sister. She doesn't ever spend very much. She always pays the balance in full. So she has really managed it very well. However, recently she got a promotion at work, and now she has some new friends, and they like to go out quite a lot more than she ever used to. So she's having fun going out with them, and they do shopping, they buy things, they get their hair done, they get their nails done, and it's fun for her to go out with them. So she didn't really notice though, but she started spending more than usual, a little bit here, a little bit there. She bought some new clothes that she didn't need, she just wanted. She got her nails done. She started putting these things on her credit card. The credit card balance started adding up. And unfortunately, she then started paying not the amount in full each month. And suddenly she realizes she owes quite a big balance. So the credit card statement came this month. She just got all upset. She actually got out the scissors, cut up her credit card, told herself she's never going to use a credit card again, cried a lot, and called her friends and said she can't even go out with them anymore because she just can't afford it. So how could Laila have managed this situation a little bit better? And what else could she have done when she got this big bill? Should she have just cut up her credit card and canceled her social life, or should she have done something different? So yeah, deep tea. She should have paid it off every month. She should have realized the first month that she couldn't pay it off, that she was in trouble, right? So I think this is something Bob and I have stressed, is take action quickly. Don't say to yourself, I will be able to sort this out next month or the month after. Say to yourself, I must sort it out now, and take action now before that balance gets big. The next person said, yes, she absolutely does need to pay it back. So maybe she needs a little plan, right? So she'll look at the balance now and she'll say to herself, how can I manage this? Okay, right. I'm not going to be able to pay it all off right now, but I do need not to put any more money on it, no more buying. And I do need to maybe, figure out, I've got to really save my pennies so that I can pay off more than the minimum balance next month. And if you keep doing that and pay off as much as you can, then it may take you a few months to pay it off, but you will be able to pay it off without getting in trouble. Absolutely. So I love hearing about people's budgets. Yes, she needs to rethink how she manages things, and she needs to be aware of her budget and what she can actually afford. So do you think that she could still go out with her friends at all? Or do you think she should stop going out with them at all? Or can she go out with them in a different way? Yes, she should be thrifty. Absolutely. So maybe Laila could still go out with her friends, but maybe she could say, hey, instead of going out to a restaurant, why don't we go and have a picnic in the park? Okay? That way everybody just brings their lunch and it doesn't really cost her any money. Certainly doesn't. Yes, she should go out, but in a smart way. Or maybe she can just rent a movie and buy some popcorn and invite all her friends around to her house for just, a movie and some popcorn and some fun, right? She doesn't maybe need to go out. Or when she goes out, if they buy clothes in the store, she doesn't need to, right? Doesn't mean she can't go out with them. Just means that she has to manage her lifestyle a little better so it costs her less. And she probably should not have cut up her credit card because, it's in the long run, it's quite a good thing to have a credit card that you have managed well, because it does help your credit history and your credit score. Yeah, I love this suggestion. When she goes out with her friends, leave her credit card at home. That is a good idea, right? She has a little bit of cash with her and she says, okay, I've got $10. That's all I'm going to spend. I'm not going to put some kind of $30 thing on my credit card. That's a really good idea. So she shouldn't have cut up her credit card. She should just think to herself, I would like to keep the credit card. I've learned a valuable lesson. I'm going to sort out the mess I'm in by having a plan. And then I'm going to think seriously about what I can afford, how much I can afford it. I'm going to be on my budget. I'm going to leave my credit card at home so I'm not tempted until I get out of this mess. And I'm going to learn a big lesson from this, okay? So her credit score for a while will go down, but her credit score will also be repaired and go up again once she fixes all of this and gets back into good habits. So those were some really good answers, some really excellent questions from this presentation. I do want to thank you all for coming. Does anybody have any last things to say before we close out for this particular session?
Hi, I have a question.
Okay.
As I asked before, that suppose somebody have a very bad score, and he wanna build up his score, or he wanna, let's suppose, like he wanna buy a house or in couple of months or in couple of years. How to increase his score, credit score, in that time, like that time frame, in that time frame.
Right. So in 2 months, that's not possible. In 2 years, that is possible.
I mean, in 10 months or in 2 years.
Okay, so if you have about a year, Bob, see what you think also, but in general, you have to just start managing things really well. So if you have big balances, try and pay them off. If you have a credit card, again, if you have no balance on it, if you spend a little bit, even $5 in the month, and pay it off straight away on time, that will help your credit score. So even spending a little bit every other month, that will help your credit score. And if you have debt, you absolutely have to just try and pay it down. if it's really big debt, you may need to talk to the credit card companies or the person who gave you the loan, or you may need to, you know, figure out even some credit counseling, you know, if it's very serious. But mostly, again, as Bob has stressed, you just need to start making good decisions. And even if it's little amounts of debt, like a few dollars, get those few dollars of debt and pay it off straight away. Because it's all about not only how much you owe, but how quickly and well you pay it off, and how little you borrow in comparison with how much everybody is having available for you to borrow. So you have to just kind of turn it around and get in good habits very quickly. But again, it doesn't have to involve lots of money. You have to just do little things, but do them well. Barbara, do you have anything to add?
I think the only thing that I would add would be, certainly you're going to want to get a copy of your credit report and study it and understand what are the items that are bringing down the score, because maybe there you can focus on those problems that are of concern to these rating companies. But the general principle is manage the debt you have well, pay off as you can, don't pay late. All of those principles tend to improve your credit history. But you want to, you know, it would be helpful for you to study that credit history and then keep track of it. Study the report, and then you can get one more than once a year if you go to different companies. So that would be something you can do to understand better why the score is as low as it is.